I was scared. I did not like that.
She's a social media sensation.
Hi, everyone.
With thousands of followers. He's a basketball sensation. NBA superstar Chris "Birdman" Anderson.
Birdman protecting the nest.
But there's a third mystery person pretending to be them, manipulating their romance with just a few keystrokes.
Were you thinking at all that this could be dangerous?
Tonight, the 2020 investigation that takes us into the frozen, remote wilderness.
Got my water, got my coffee. Here we go.
Looking for the puppeteer who's pulling their strings online.
This is pretty creepy stuff.
Catfishing them without them even knowing it.
It really became a game. The catfish really sort of wanted to see how far they could take it.
This far, threatening her.
He said that he was going to send somebody down there and he was going to have me murdered and thrown on the side of the street.
Almost ruining the basketball star's career.
Why Chris?
Police are searching his computer.
Why can't you grasp that you almost took this man's life?
So tonight, we're catching the catfish. You won't believe who's the invisible mastermind operating from this tiny house in the middle of nowhere.
Hello. Hey.
It just got crazy from that point on.
Good evening, I'm Elizabeth Vargas.
And I'm David Muir. You can call it a catfish or sometimes even a con artist. Really, either way, it's pretty much the same thing. Someone faking their identity online to get your love, your money, or really just for playing kicks. But tonight's catfish pulled off a bizarre string of impersonations for nearly 3 years, and authorities say with as many as 11 victims.
Posing as a friend, but turning out to be a fraud with just a few keystrokes. And even more astoundingly, this catfish did it with only a 6th grade education. It could make us all wonder who we are really communicating with online. Here's Deborah Roberts on the hunt for the so-called ghost of Easterville.
Meet Paris Dillon, whose real name is Paris Dunn, a 23-year-old aspiring model in Southern California with a Kim Kardashian look.
Paris Dillon 550.
And a big social media presence.
Follow me.
Some of your photos are kind of racy.
I like to communicate the sexiness. I like taking pictures where you could feel it.
25,000 Twitter followers, 87,000 Facebook fans, 370,000 Instagram groupies. She's quite the sensation. But Paris might be a little overexposed because she's entangled in one of the most mind-bending internet intrigues of all time. An elaborate catfish scam. Before it's over, there will be vicious threats, blackmail, warrants, and an international criminal investigation.
This is probably one of the most complicated and confusing catfish stories I've ever heard.
What exactly does catfishing mean?
A catfish is someone who uses internet profiles to interact with people online, usually pretending to be either a version of themselves or someone entirely different.
Neve Schulman knows better than anyone. He was a famous victim of a catfish and even made a documentary about it.
Are you ready? Sound, levels.
Bewitched by a beautiful young woman online.
If we met each other, it would be like an instantaneous relationship.
Chasing an internet infatuation.
Oh my God.
Only to discover he'd been had.
I've probably been chatting with a guy this whole time.
That oh no moment.
Hi.
His dream girl unmasked as a middle-aged mother.
Got a great imagination.
Neve now regularly exposes similar love scams as the host of his own MTV show, Catfish. But the stunning catfish case we're about to uncover, Neve says, is like nothing he's ever seen.
What this catfish was able to accomplish, incredibly manipulative, wildly creative, and somewhat impressive.
It begins with Paris flirting with pro athletes online.
Hi, everyone.
She's only 17 at the time, but tells people she's older.
It was easy to get in contact with people and follow their pages.
To her delight, Paris appears to catch the eye of NBA basketball star Chris Anderson on Facebook. Nicknamed the Birdman, then with the Denver Nuggets, Anderson's one of the most colorful players in the game.
Oh, here comes the Birdman!
6 foot 10 inches of tattoos, known for his mohawk and crowd-pleasing arm flapping.
Birdman protecting the nest.
Anderson, 33 at the time, is the NBA's cartoon action hero, says sports writer Flender Boyd.
Birdman, he was this effervescent character, this redneck superstar.
He's a true country boy. Fans relate to him as a person. There you can see the couple of tattoos.
Mark Bryant has represented Anderson from the beginning of his career. He's also a mentor and father figure.
I guess I'm probably one of the biggest collectors of Chris's stuff. That Giddy family member that collects the stuff.
He was touched by young Chris's big heart and hardscrabble Texas roots.
Chris grew up in a boys' home for several years. His mom got him back, and he had a tough childhood down there.
But the Birdman may have never faced anything as treacherous as the tender trap about to snap on him and Paris.
I ended up receiving a direct message from him on Facebook.
Do you remember what it said?
I think it said like, hey, I see you're a fan.
And what did you think?
A little skeptical that he would just write, but being 17, I was an excited girl.
So excited she can hardly believe it's him. And maybe she shouldn't. Their conversations quickly jumped from Facebook to email, texting, and most convincingly, selfies.
And then that's the first one I ever got.
Beginning with this photo snapped in a mirror, unmistakably Chris Anderson.
I was like, oh, it's real then, you know? I mean, he would send selfies all the time like this.
But was there a caption? I mean, did he say anything?
It was just,
hello,
here's a pic, send a selfie back, you know?
Paris later sends this picture of herself wearing Anderson's number 11. She texts, you like it? And here's back, I love, you're beautiful.
This is supposed to be Chris Anderson's Facebook page where he puts, my girl looks better in my jersey than I do. Because
responding to the picture of you in the jersey.
I had sent a picture of me in his jersey. That was his wallpaper.
They're now in a whirlwind online relationship, swapping more pictures.
Becoming friends, you know, sending the selfies. He had a pit bull named Hannibal, and, you know, it was just a baby, so it was fun.
Then a guy calling himself Tom Taylor also connects with Paris online.
Did you know who Tom Taylor was?
I had no idea. He told me in the message he was best friends with Chris Anderson.
If you Google Tom Taylor, he's right there, a professional video gamer. And that's who Paris thinks she's talking to.
What did the message say?
It was like, hey, I see you, like, started talking to Chris Anderson. I know you're a fan.
One thing did puzzle Paris, though, and if she'd only paid more attention, because it would become deeply important later. The phone numbers she has for both Chris Anderson and Tom Taylor have an odd area code from outside the U.S. Tom has an explanation. He always does.
He just said, oh, it's my Google number, you know, it's all good. Me being 17 and dumb, I just believed it.
You let it go?
Yeah.
She'd regret that later. But the California girl and the NBA star Chris Anderson have other things in mind. Though they're 1,000 miles apart and have never really actually spoken on the phone, their relationship is turning X-rated.
Did you send any other photos that might be a little more provocative?
Yeah, we exchanged nude photos.
And were you worried at all as you're sending these that they could fall into the wrong hands?
Honestly, no, not really. I trusted that it was him, and I knew he wouldn't do anything because, you know, of his position.
And egging her on is Chris Anderson's supposed friend, Tom Taylor, who suggests that Paris and the Birdman take their relationship into the real world.
How does that happen?
We're talking, and he's like, I can let you guys meet. He wants to meet you.
What did you think when he said, do you two want to hang out?
Well, by that point, I was like, yeah, sure.
Intrigued by the adventure of her steamy online relationship, Paris accepts an invitation for a weekend rendezvous in Denver. Chris buys a ticket, Paris packs a bag, and concocts a story for her mom.
What do you say to your mom?
I had said that I was going to go see a boyfriend that I was seeing at the time that I had seen a month earlier. She trusted me, and I went on my way.
And it never troubled you that you're going to see this guy and you've never even spoken to him on the phone?
No, it didn't. I was just into the texting and the selfies and the pictures. That's what I trusted.
That trust would lead to big trouble. But Paris, blinded by excitement, is soon on her way to Denver.
Were you thinking at all that this could be dangerous?
Stay with us. At Denver International Airport, 17-year-old Paris Dunn from Southern California has just landed, ready for a weekend fling with pro basketball player Chris Anderson.
What's going through your mind?
Nerves, anxiety, excitement.
The two have been in touch online through Facebook, email, and text messages, but incredibly, they've never actually spoken to each other until this moment.
Were you thinking at all that this could be dangerous?
I was a little nervous, like maybe like the day of, but I didn't feel in any crazy danger.
She'll regret not asking more questions, because what Paris doesn't know is that her weekend plan was orchestrated by someone other than the man she's about to meet. There's a catfish out there with hooks in her and Chris Anderson.
I get off the plane and he's texting, okay, I'm at this exit. That was the moment where I see, like, is this real or not? And when the door opened, there he was.
Looking just as you imagined he would look.
Yeah, tattoos and all. He gave me a kiss and gave me a hug, and we were happy. I was happy.
How are you reacting to each other?
I was nervous and shy. It was kind of like a first date thing.
This first date has some awkward moments. Both seem to have strange, incorrect details about the other.
A couple little weird things, you know, that didn't add up.
Such as?
He said, you told me you brought a lot of Victoria's Secret stuff to wear for me. And I said, no, I didn't. And then he was like, when is your trip to Africa? And I was like, I'm not going on any trip. Like, what are you talking about?
He's asking you weird questions, but you're shrugging it off.
Just shrugging it off. Just like, okay, well, we're just messing around.
And one more miscommunication. Remember the guy who encouraged the visit and claimed to be Chris's buddy, Tom Taylor?
I said, well, Tom said, he's like, who's Tom? And I was like, your best friend. And he was like, I don't know a Tom.
A bizarre disconnect. Maybe the NBA player has Paris confused with another woman.
That's a big red flag.
It was. I thought he was messing around. When he was like, who's Tom? I was like, no.
But you don't really connect any dots.
Nope.
They were strange, confusing little question marks that kind of peppered the weekend, but nothing so alarming that it tipped either of them off.
Clearly, the weekend becomes a little bit more intimate.
It wasn't just about sex at all. Like, we actually did stuff and watched movies and TV, and then he went off to practice.
Paris is having a ball, snapping photos, even selfies with Hannibal. The kitchen, rec room, and the NBA player's size 15.5 sneakers. Then Anderson's mysterious best pal, Tom Taylor, checks in, wondering how things are going.
He was like telling me, go take a picture of this, go put his hat on, you know? And it's like, I remember being like, I'm not gonna go through the guy's stuff.
At this point, you're considering Tom a friend.
Yeah, a friend.
Or is he? After the weekend fling, Chris drives Paris back to the airport.
He got out and he gave me a kiss and I went off.
What's wild is that the weekend get-together that Paris and Chris had was really only the beginning of this crazy story. Things really took a turn for the worse.
In fact, not long after Paris is back home in California snapping selfies by the pool, she's getting barraged by messages from Tom Taylor.
Yeah, it was all the time.
Non-stop.
It was constant. Almost like a jealous woman would be.
After the weekend together, the Catfish really, I think, became empowered and even a little emboldened. What's next?
Then Paris reveals an interest in another NBA player.
My friend gave me tickets to go meet Blake Griffin at some Clipper event. So I said, I'm gonna go see Blake Griffin today, you know, exciting.
She's stunned when the message seems to enrage Anderson and Tom Taylor.
I remember it just got crazy from that point on. That just just set something loose in the head.
Taylor now seems to be flaming Paris with angry, abusive text messages.
I have folders of nasty text messages.
Tons and tons.
Tons and tons.
What was he saying?
He said that he was going to send somebody down there and he was going to have me raped and murdered and thrown on the side of the street.
Just because you were going to see Blake
Just because
Griffin?
I was going to see Blake. Something just went and just set him off.
Are you scared?
I was scared. I did not like that.
And then another frightening threat. Taylor telling Paris that his friend Anderson shared her nude photos with him.
Essentially, the Catfish was using Tom to threaten Paris, to say, not only am I going to physically harm you, but those naked photos you sent Chris, I have them. He showed them to me.
He sends Paris a link. She clicks, and to her horror, there are her nude photos, all posted on the internet for anyone to see.
And I see just all my pictures, my address, my phone number.
And these are nude pictures?
These are nude photos of me. All my pictures I had sent Chris. All my Chris Anderson pictures.
This is pretty creepy stuff.
Oh God, it was terrible.
So clearly, this is where the story really starts to escalate.
Because this isn't just about power. Now this is about just anger and real hostility.
The Catfish decided, for whatever reason, I'm angry, or I'm jealous, or I'm not happy with how things are going in my life, so I'm going to transfer some of that onto these two otherwise innocent people.
Exposed and now threatened, a furious and frightened Paris at last reveals her secret life to her mother.
That's when me and my mom called the police. These are underage pictures online, and he's putting my address. So that was immediate. Call the police right there.
And what did you hear from the police?
We're like, Chris Anderson's involved. You know, they're like small town police people, so they're like, what? He said, you just opened a can of worms.
A can of worms that would include the near destruction of a sports star's career.
The Chris Anderson case centers around Anderson's involvement with a 17-year-old girl.
Still ahead, basketball and blackmail.
Full extortion.
Stay with us.
Westbrook ahead to Durant.
February 2012, 2 months after a weekend rendezvous between Paris Dunn and Denver Nuggets star Chris Anderson, the Birdman, playing in this game in Oklahoma City, gets a hair-raising email and hands the phone to his lawyer, Mark Bryant, sitting courtside.
He looks at me and goes, well, so what, man? And it's the girl's mother.
What does she say?
I know what you did.
It's an email supposedly from Paris Dunn's mother, telling Anderson that spending the weekend with her daughter was a huge crime because Paris is underage, barely 17. That's news to Anderson.
She booked through a travel agent of Chris's and gave a date of birth that matched 21. And how did she come through the airport and everything else with security with that date of birth?
She's threatening to ruin Anderson's life and career unless he pays thousands of dollars.
A full extortion.
So she's threatening to ruin Chris's career.
You're going to get sued and he's going to go to prison and, you know, all these threats.
The NBA player with a mild manner and a big heart now finds his career in jeopardy, a career he worked hard to build.
So the guy had made his way, he pounded his way out of the dirt, and then this. I respond back, you're talking to his attorney. There's nothing that's happened here that's criminal. You're engaged in extortion. Go away.
And even if Paris is only 17, Anderson's relations with her are legal in Colorado. But those nude photos are another matter. That amounts to child pornography.
Chris didn't do anything wrong, but it's embarrassing. This is a man who's beloved in his community. It would ruin him.
To protect Birdman, who's like a son to him, Bryant quietly sends $3,000 to a PayPal account to make the whole thing go away.
$3,000?
Yes, ma'am.
And then you thought it was done?
I thought it was done.
But it wasn't. A few months later, out of the blue, Chris Anderson is pulled over by the Douglas County, Colorado Sheriff's Department.
That's when it started. Chris had actually left his house to go to practice, and they executed the warrant when he left.
Did he have any idea what was happening?
We didn't know what was going on. We had no idea.
Deputies and the Internet Crimes Against Children Unit swarm Anderson's home.
And we start today with that developing story. Investigators seizing computers from the Larkspur home of Chris Birdman Anderson.
The sheriff's department was tearing his house apart. They took his computers, they took his phones.
We were in the playoffs at the time. I mean, that story, it broke.
We now know what evidence investigators are looking for on his home computer.
The Chris Anderson case centers around Anderson's involvement with a 17-year-old girl.
It was on every TV station, everywhere. Everybody was conjecturing.
There were media trucks posted up on his lawn, and it was all over the evening news, all over social media.
Deputies collect Anderson's electronic devices.
His computer and several computer-related devices like thumb drives have been confiscated.
The sheriff's office telling us he's cooperating in the investigation and he is not under arrest.
As far as the police can tell, Paris, underage, did in fact meet with and sleep with Chris Anderson, and there are these photos that Chris has apparently posted. So now, as far as the police department can tell they're dealing with a case of child pornography.
What was kind of an innocent weekend get-together from an online relationship, now it's all collapsing on Chris Anderson.
Which is just crazy. I mean, I can't even imagine what Chris must have thought.
On social media, Anderson's being called a child molester, a cloud of suspicion settling over him.
Some of the fans started to say some pretty nasty things.
Yes, ma'am. It was hard on Chris. And people were putting labels on him. We always knew you were some kind of dangerous freak. Hey, pedophile, what's up?
The negative attention is too much for the Denver Nuggets. Chris Anderson is let go.
He lost out on a lot of money. He lost out on endorsements. And I think that was probably the least of his worries. It was his reputation that took such a battering at that time.
He felt like he lost that. He lost himself. He lost that ability. He may be out of the NBA. And what is this? So all of that just came raining down.
And in California, Paris is feeling betrayed by Chris Anderson.
A piece of me was, God, how could this happen? I can't even believe it. And then another piece of me was like, oh, good, you know, if you're going to do stuff like that, well, you obviously were asking for it.
This is Bird, Mile High Sports, Dime Magazine.
Tattoo artist John Slaughter says he's gotten to know the Birdman well over 15 years of inking him.
It was just a disgusting ordeal that I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy.
He says the scandal got under his friend's skin so much that Anderson had to leave town.
He was like a staple in Denver. He had to leave. He left here because people were so cruel and so disrespectful, and they had no idea what was going on.
It was the worst. This was absolutely contrary to who this man was, what he believed in, what his heart bled. It just made no sense to me.
It's not making sense to police either. As detectives dig through Chris Anderson and Paris Dunn's electronic records, they make some astonishing discoveries, finding fake Facebook pages, fake email addresses, and fake phone numbers.
And that's when they finally start to sort of see the tip of the iceberg, that there's this other person, and wait a second, this other person has all these fake profiles and this phone number.
Remember those weird area codes Paris noticed coming from both Anderson's and Tom Taylor's text messages?
We were a little surprised of the location of where it was coming from.
The investigation leading police and us 1,000 miles away to a tiny town in the middle of nowhere. It's time to go fishing, catfishing. And you won't believe who we find and where.
Hello.
Stay with us.
I am Deborah.
At 36,000 feet, we're in search of one of the most cunning internet scam artists of all time. Colorado investigators break the case wide open when they discover something very odd. Every single email, text, and Facebook message NBA star Chris Anderson and Paris Dunn sent to each other originated outside the United States.
Well, so the investigation really takes a turn when they trace it to this tiny town in Canada. And obviously everybody's sort of scratching their heads thinking,
What does that have to do with this case?
With the trail of the catfish veering to the north, Colorado detectives turned to Canadian authorities for help with what they call a messed up case.
I like the messed up cases, so I said, let's get going on it.
Gord Olson is a constable with the famed Royal Canadian Mounted Police, Canada's version of the FBI.
And it was, can you run this phone number down? Can you run this IP address down? That was all that was told to us.
The Catfish has been located in the province of Manitoba in a tiny speck of a town, Easterville.
Got my water, got my coffee, and now GPS to Easterville, Canada. 5 hours. Whew, here we go.
We set out before dawn from Winnipeg on a 5-hour drive up Highway 6. North through the foggy, frozen flat plains, deep into the province. With each kilometer, the Canadian landscape growing wilder. By midday, we're finally here.
First sign of life. I think we're in Easterville. Here we go.
Tiny Easterville is home to about 1,700 mostly native people from the Chemawawan Cree Nation.
The town isn't near anything. There's no strip malls. There's a grocery store, and that's it. So Easterville is as sleepy and remote as a place can be.
And in that remote place, this tiny blue house. Police pinpoint this as the spot where every message between Anderson, Paris, and Tom Taylor originated. The Catfish has just invited us in.
Hello. Hi, I'm Deborah. Nice to meet you. How you doing?
Nervous.
And here she is, the Puppet Master, a soft-spoken, childlike woman, a member of the Cree Nation, 33-year-old Shelley Chartier.
Now, Shelley, did you do all the...
At first, she's reluctant to talk with us.
My uncle.
Then shows us around the home she shares with 5 family members.
This is my mom.
Hi, I'm Deborah Roberts.
Shelley's life revolves around caring for her invalid and bedridden mother, Delia.
She cooks for me. She don't like that.
She tells us she was bullied at school and dropped out at age 12.
For so many kids that age, that's what life is about, school. So what did you do with yourself?
I got online. I went through a period where I didn't leave my house for 11 years.
11 years?
Mm-hmm.
Isolated with little contact with the outside world, Shelley's reality is a far cry from Paris Dunn's glittering California existence and the glam life of NBA star Chris Anderson. The elusive woman earning the nickname the Ghost of Easterville.
Shelley is the perfect example of what happens when you mix isolation, boredom, obsession, insecurity, and you create a catfish who has the potential to destroy people's lives.
Investigators say the shy woman has a sinister side, tormenting 11 victims over 3 years, making numerous fake Facebook pages, impersonating a YouTube comedian, a Playboy playmate, and Brody Jenner, Caitlyn Jenner's son. But her most complex catfishing, orchestrating that hookup between Paris Dunn and Chris Anderson.
And how did that even begin for you?
I was bored one night and I saw this girl on Facebook on his page, and she was like, "Hey, call me," like seeking attention.
Shelley managed to get Paris and Anderson's phone numbers. Police still aren't sure how. And then on Facebook, text, and email began her bizarre role-playing game, alternately impersonating Paris and Chris.
So you said hello to Paris.
I said, "Hey, it's Chris."
As Chris.
And she said, "Oh my God."
So Paris thinks, oh, Chris just friend requested me and wants to get in touch.
She then does the same thing to Chris, pretending to be Paris.
For the months, Paris and Chris never directly communicated with each other. All of their messages were going through this operator, this Catfish.
When Paris thinks she's sending a message to Chris, it's really going to Shelley, who then relays a version to Chris, and vice versa.
In many cases, the Catfish was sort of copy-pasting. But in some cases, our Catfish would change things, twist things.
And as for that meddling friend of Anderson's, video gamer Tom Taylor, that was Shelley too. The real Tom Taylor never contacted Paris and doesn't even know Chris Anderson.
In this case, the Catfish had created a third character to find out, what does she think about Chris? How's it going?
Though she expresses some remorse, incredibly Shelley blames Paris for falling for the scam.
But most people would also ask to talk to the person they're going to see too.
On the phone?
Yeah, or Skype them or something. You don't just fly somewhere and not know this person.
So you're saying that's sort of on her, that she went to go see him without knowing who he was?
Yeah, because I didn't tell her to fly down there. I just asked her if she would.
But what about that blackmail, supposedly from Paris Dunn's mother, demanding a payoff? Police say that was Shelley too.
Did you say, "Send me money"?
No, I never. He offered it.
Did you threaten Chris?
No.
In fact, investigators say there's no doubt about who emailed that blackmail letter.
Who wrote that letter?
Shelley did.
Shelley wrote that letter.
That's correct.
Shelley Chartier is charged with impersonation, extortion, making threats, and transmitting child pornography, those nude photos of Paris.
Did you have any idea when you're going online that you might possibly Ruin some lives?
No.
Hurt people?
No. I did not think of the emotional scarring, I guess, like on Paris.
But yet you continue to go back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
How come?
Because I'm stupid. Just plain and simple. And I've never known people like that. I never knew anybody in the NBA. And I thought that was cool, I guess.
Still ahead, Shelley's bizarre day in court in a town with no courthouse. The ghost of Easterville finally surfaces to face the music. And she goes back online. Is this her next victim? Stay with us.
This is the house?
That's it.
Let's take a look.
I mean, we love this house. I mean, we had a lot of good times here.
The good times all gone at Chris Anderson's former Rocky Mountain retreat, even though police now say the Birdman and the real Tom Taylor did nothing wrong. Not suspects, but victims of that wily woman up in Canada.
When you heard that Chris's life is being controlled and ruined by this woman, what did you think?
I was mad as hell.
Even after being arrested and agreeing to stay off the internet, Shelley Chartier, the Catfish, is back online.
She now meets this individual, Rob Marcoux, online, a young man from New York.
Marcoux is 23. He lives in Brooklyn, New York, and works as a furniture mover. He meets Shelley playing Xbox Live.
She sent me a message, and I responded. It kind of went back and forth, and then we took it from there.
As Rob and Shelley grow closer from afar, his family gets suspicious.
I understand. A lot of them would say things like, oh, maybe she's not even real, they're using you, and all types of stuff. And I said, no, like, I know for a fact she's real, and I'll prove it.
Rob doesn't know he's falling for the woman we now know as the Catfish.
She makes me laugh a lot, and she's cute.
And despite the warnings, he heads to Canada to meet her.
When I first got there, I was nervous in the car. It was a 5-hour ride. I went to knock on the door, and she just appeared right by my side and kind of scared me.
He showed up, and he came to my room, and he said, so you want to marry me? And I said, okay.
Soon, the master of fake connections was ready for a real one.
Then we got married in the kitchen right here.
You got married here in the kitchen?
Yeah.
A minister from a neighboring town marries them on Christmas Day.
He has a shirt of this.
And did you have on a big wedding gown?
Pajamas.
Pajamas?
Yeah.
The internet and all the harm that it brought in Shelley Chartier's world may actually have brought her something else in life, and that is a husband, something that probably would have been foreign to her, this idea of actually a relationship.
But there would be no band at her wedding. Instead, Shelley faces the music at the Easterville Community Center.
Once a month, this room transforms into a provincial courtroom, and on the day of Shelley Chartier's sentencing, it was quite the scene.
Reporter Mike McIntyre was there for the Winnipeg Free Press.
There was in fact standing room only all along the back wall.
Everyone eager to get a glimpse of the ghost of Easterville.
We had actually never even seen a photograph of her up until that point. When she walked into court and somebody said, that's Shelley Chartier, I said, you must be kidding me. That looks like a teenage girl.
The woman who hadn't left her home in 11 years, finally forced out into the light.
Tell me what that day was like.
I didn't sleep for 4 days before my court date, and I didn't eat.
Shelley arrives, her bedridden mother following on a stretcher.
Judge Rolston was about here. Shelley Chartier, within a couple feet, they could actually have reached out and touched each other. Shelley Chartier, her head down in her lap, clearly upset.
When you went to court, you eventually pleaded.
Yeah.
Guilty to fraud, to impersonation, to threats.
Yeah.
Shelley's hoping for house arrest, but the judge surprises her with hard time. 18 months in prison.
When he said, okay, 18 months, I knew I was going to jail.
Your head dropped.
Yeah.
What were you thinking?
I thought my life is over.
She's brought out in handcuffs and taken away to serve her time.
How hard was that for you? To step outside this house?
I was scared.
Being locked up, away from the phone and computer screens, forced to interact with other people has actually been good for Shelley.
In some strange way, you found your life after you went to prison.
I was scared to go out. I was scared to do anything. Very scared of life. I got a job there. I worked, and I learned how to talk to people.
For somebody who really has no friends, who's had little outside contact with the world, jail could actually turn out to be a blessing.
A blessing for Shelley, but what about the victims left in her wake?
If you could say something to Paris, what would you say?
I just feel really bad for her because I basically used her in every way.
But when it comes to her other victim, Chris Anderson, Shelley has a lot less remorse.
What would you say to Chris Anderson if you could say something to him?
I don't know.
For 2 years, his life was ruined.
I don't even know what happened to him. What happened after Colorado?
Listen to Shelley play dumb.
He basically was kicked off his team.
To where?
He lost his endorsements.
Where did he go?
Here comes the Birdman!
He eventually went to Miami.
Flapping his wings!
Did they win?
They did.
Poor guy.
She may have turned over a new leaf in Canada, but there's something Shelley doesn't want to think about: the possibility of extradition and decades in prison in Colorado.
You think she should face charges here?
Yes, yes.
Stay with us. After everything NBA star Chris Anderson has been through,
like the guy in sports,
the White House may have been the last place he'd expect to find himself. But there he is in January 2014, along with LeBron James and the rest of the Miami Heat, being honored for a championship season.
everybody on this team participated. Birdman, Birdman's tattoos, Birdman's mohawk.
After the blackmail and child porn accusations, Miami took a chance on Anderson, something he'll forever be grateful for, says friend and attorney Mark Bryant.
What a great trust and opportunity they gave us.
So continue following me, and thank you very much.
As for Paris, she's still out there online, and tonight will likely get an even bigger following. And the Catfish who nearly wrecked their lives? After a year behind bars, Shelley Chartier walked out of prison. Her new husband, Rob, right there to meet her.
I'm still taking it in, the whole thing.
She now begins serving 2 years of probation. One of the conditions, no internet without court-ordered supervision, which could be tough for her. Check out the ironic t-shirt she was wearing when we FaceTimed a couple of days after her release.
What does your shirt say?
Born on the internet.
Already there are challenges in their new life. Rob is not a Canadian citizen, so he has to leave the country periodically. Still, the newlyweds vow to find a way to be together. But this notorious catfish is not out of the woods. Colorado has a warrant for her arrest. If extradited and convicted, she could face 24 years in prison in the U.S.
Do you think it'll happen?
Do you think I should go to jail?
What do you think?
I don't know what you think.
No, I mean, what do you think? I'm not asking you what I think.
I think I've done my time.
But don't tell that to Shelley's victim, Paris Dunn.
When you heard that she was convicted, given 18 months in prison, is that enough?
I don't think it's enough. I wish it was more, of course.
The person does not seem to be remorseful to me.
Chris Anderson declined to speak with us for this story, but his attorney, Mark Bryant, says justice has yet to be served.
Why can't you grasp that you almost took this man's life and others?
You think she should face charges here?
Yes. Yes.
Now and again, neighbors catch a glimpse of the former ghost of Easterville, leaving behind those dark waters of the internet. The former catfish out in the daylight for a walk with her new husband, hoping to find happily ever after offline.
Paris Dunn and lawyer Mark Bryant may just get their wish. A district attorney in Colorado telling 2020 tonight that we are actively pursuing extradition proceedings in this case and look forward to this defendant answering to charges in Colorado.
So that leads to our question for you tonight. Do you think Shelley Chartier has already been punished enough with her sentence in Canada? Let us know on Facebook and Twitter. Thanks so much for watching. In the meantime, I'm Elizabeth Vargas.
And I'm David Muir. From all of us here at 2020 and ABC News, thanks for watching. Good night.